Well, hello. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Royal Festival Hall and to this very special event, Quentin Blake Virtually Live, brought to you by Puffin Books. Now, I'm Damien Kelleher, and I'm here to explain to you today how everything works. Now, the event is called Virtually Live because right here in the Royal Festival Hall at the South Bank in London, we have all of you who are our live audience. At least, I think you're live, aren't you? Can I hear anything from you? I think you can do a little bit better than that. Quentin Blake's coming on in a minute. Fantastic. And the virtual part, of course, comes in because we have a virtual audience who are joining us over the internet today. And that's hundreds of thousands of people who are joining us, not just in the UK, but actually much further afield as well in the States. So if you are joining us from the USA, a very good morning to you too. Now, did anyone here celebrate Roald Dahl Day a couple of weeks ago? Yeah? Yeah, of course you did. It's one of the biggest events in our calendar now, and it's a day that we can celebrate all his fantastic books and writing. But today is the day that we turn the spotlight on the wonderfully talented artist who illustrated so many of Roald's books, Quentin Blake. Now, I'm going to be chatting to Quentin about his work, and thanks to this snazzy little piece of technology over here called the visualizer, you'll be able to watch Quentin draw for us too. Now, he's got a few surprises for you today, including some illustrations for a very famous Roald Dahl book that have never previously been seen. So can you guess what the book is? Have a little think about that, because you'll find out. All is going to be revealed. Now, let's meet the man who has won awards galore for his illustrations. Not just that, but when a very special award was introduced for outstanding achievement in children's books in 1999, Quentin Blake became our very first children's laureate. And if you find children's laureates hard to spell, well, children's book Big Cheese just about sums it up. He was once described as the finest illustrator for children's books in the world today. And can you guess who said that about him? Anyone got any ideas? Yeah? It was Roald Dahl. You're absolutely right. And if Roald Dahl thought that, then that's good enough for me. So please give a very big warm welcome to Quentin Blake. Wow. Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you all so much for making Quentin very welcome. Quentin, just before we started though, I know we saw a little clip of Roald talking about his life and his work, and can you remember the very first time that you met him? When was the first time you met Roald Dahl?
Well, looking at that film, I was looking at some of it from the side there, and of course it brings back a lot of memories.
Yeah.
I don't remember the very first time that we met, because we were brought together by our publisher,
right.
Who said, would you like to try a few experimental drawings to see if you get the job of illustrating a Roald Dahl book? But I remember him very well indeed. When we first met, I think I was a little bit nervous because he was already a very, very famous author, you know, and I was rather anxious to get this job. And I think maybe some other people did some drawings for it as well, but yeah, it was like a little exam.
And you passed,
I
thank
passed.
Now, what was he like as a person? Because I know it's quite hard for us to remember now. We all know his books so well, and we get a very good idea of what he was like as a person through the books, but you knew him. What would you say he was like?
An extraordinarily interesting person, and in a sense, what I was conscious of, not at all like me in a way, because he was the sort of person you think of as he was really a man of action.
Yeah.
And I think that's why he was so good at telling stories, because he wanted to tell you about things which happened. And of course, that was wonderful for me, because some books are all about what people are thinking and what their emotions are at that time. But what Roald was doing was explaining that to you in activities. There was always something happening, and so there was this excitement about what you could draw as well.
Yeah.
You know.
And he was a very kind person too, wasn't he? And that's part of his legacy, really, is all the charitable work that he's done.
Yes, I mean, there is this, the Roald Dahl Foundation, which is now called the Roald Dahl Marvellous Children's Charity. Fabulous. And it is marvellous, and I'm very proud of it because I'm the president of it.
Yeah.
And the president means that they tell you all about it, but you don't have to do anything. It's very good.
Oh, I like that. I like that idea. Now, when did you first... I know that you and Roald, obviously, you had a great friendship as well that arose as part of your work. Was there a particular project that brought you together?
The first two books I did, we met in the publisher's office, so to speak, and I'd done some drawings and when we looked at them. But we really got to know each other very well when we were doing the BFG, because I was only, to begin with, I was only asked to do a few drawings. And I think it was because our publisher thought that this was a long book. Perhaps not all writers like drawings in their books, you know. So it was an extraordinary thing, because I did about a dozen drawings, and the book was at the printers. And I got a phone call, and they said, he's not happy. And we didn't know why he wasn't happy, but why he wasn't happy was that there weren't enough drawings in it, which is very, very good. So I did lots. I started again and did a lot more drawings, and it meant we really got together to talk about which things we should draw. And Roald made a list of the things that he thought should draw, and we really got talking about it in a way that we hadn't before.
And he actually, especially with the BFG, I know he influenced a lot of the drawings that you did in it.
Yes. Well, can I show you a bit of that?
Yeah, we'd love to see. Let's go over to the visualizer. Let's see if the magic works.
The first time I did these drawings for Roald, the BFG, well, you know about the BFG. The BFG has big ears. And my first set of drawings, he looked a bit like this. He's a giant, of course, but...
So this is an early BF,
an
early prototype.
This is an early version before we really got going. Of course, the nice thing about it is ears. And they're really enjoyable, and it's funny, you know.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
nice. But when we started to do it again, I realized that because we talked about it a lot, and I discovered really more in the book and how close Roald was to this character. And so I sort of, if you draw someone in a book, it's like getting to know them in a way, you know. And so he began to look a bit more like this.
Wow.
And you saw how. And then, of course, the ears are not just big, sticky-out ears. They actually move about so that you can... It's possible to hear things. And they move into different positions. And they're so big, in fact, that, you know, you discover that actually Sophie could actually sit in one.
Ah, that's someone that's very familiar there.
So that's Sophie.
Wonderful. So is that a little bit... Is that a little bit more like Roald himself? do you think?
It is, yes. One or two people at the time said that I based it on him, but
Yeah.
it doesn't actually look like him. But of course, both these people were very tall, and you could see that there were things in common between them. So in a sense, I didn't make it look like him, but in some ways, it sort of felt like him a bit more, if you know what I mean.
Now, can we... I know that the very first... That wasn't the first project that you worked on with Roald, was it?
No. Shall I tell you what it was?
I think you should start to draw it. So let's see what the very first project that Quentin worked on with Roald Dahl. Let's have a look.
I hope I can
See if you
remember
can guess as he draws it.
It's a long time ago.
Oh, it seems like yesterday. Ah, any ideas yet? No, maybe you need a little bit more. Have a bit more. No! It's coming there. I think we might need a few gnashers.
Here, look. Now, the important thing about... I want to tell you the important thing about it is, of course, it's the enormous crocodile.
Of course, the
friend,
enormous crocodile.
But in the book it says he's got hundreds of teeth. But of course, real crocodiles, it's not a real crocodile.
No.
It's real crocodiles have nasty teeth, but they don't have hundreds of teeth. And I thought, how shall I draw these teeth? So I did them like this. It takes quite a long time to do. Every crocodile, every drawing has all these teeth. And as I say, that's not exactly what real crocodiles are like, but of course these are special teeth. They're teeth for catching children. And in the book, of course, the great thing in the book is that he never does catch any children.
No.
But of course, I can go on drawing these pictures at home, and sometimes something happens that doesn't happen in the book. You see.
You could so easily come a cropper, couldn't you?
Yes. There you see. That's her brother, just gone in there.
Wonderful.
That's the crop.
Fantastic. Quentin, did you, when these manuscripts arrived, when Roald's books turned up before, waiting for your illustrations, did you ever have any inkling of what they were going to be about, of what the subject matter was?
No. No, that was, in a way, that was the most exciting part about it almost, because if you illustrate some people's books, and some people write a series and the same characters reappear.
Yeah.
But Roald never told me what was going on, and I knew there was a book coming, and I would think, what's he done this time? Am I going to be frightened? You know, what is he up to? And the only thing that happened sometimes, because when I got to know him, he'd say, "Oh, Quint, working on a new book. You'll have some fun with this one." And I thought, oh yes, very good. And sometimes he'd say, "Oh, working on a new book, you'll have trouble with this one." But that's because he liked teasing you. And in a way, a book that's got trouble in it is interesting. It means there's something difficult to do. And that I liked about it. But the amazing thing was what happened was a typed manuscript would arrive in a brown envelope brought by the postman. And you read it for the first time. And you can imagine how extraordinary it is, reading the manuscript, reading the story of a Roald Dahl book.
For the very first time, before anyone else has ever seen it.
And I used to do little drawings and little notes in the margin. Oh, that would be good to draw, you know, that sort of thing.
Now, I know we were talking about the BFG, weren't we? And,
yes.
The fact that Roald had this fantastic talent for inventing strange words and language, didn't he? And in fact, in the BFG, it's got its own name. It's called Gobblefunk, isn't it?
Yes. Double fun. Very good.
And I believe that there are 283 words in total that were made up. Can you
know
believe
that.
that for the BFG? So it just shows really how versatile and how talented he was. But he never let ideas go to waste either, did he? Because didn't he have a special way of keeping them all?
That's right. I think it was in the shed, but he had a book that he wrote ideas down in. And it's a good thing to do, because if you get an idea, you forget it if you don't write it down somewhere. And he had this book of ideas, and it's fascinating to read some of those again, because there are books there that you discover, oh, that became Fantastic Mr. Fox, I've read it. And other ones who think, perhaps he never got to write that, you know. It's an extraordinary thing.
And some books, I know, like Matilda, I think it was something like 20 years from the time when he first had the idea and wrote it down in the book until he actually until he completed the book.
Well, he certainly, and he told me that when he started, it was completely different. It was
Really?
a different book. He changed the character of the little girl.
Right.
But I love Matilda very much. I'm glad she turned out the way she did.
I think we all are too. Now, I know that Roald had some, he was the sort of person who didn't hold back, did he, on his opinions? If he thought, if he had a very strong thought, he would always share it.
Yes.
And I know that some of the things that he felt very strongly about were the things that he didn't like. Now, I know that there were 3 things that he didn't really like.
I think there are probably more than that.
Oh, well. Well, 3 things that we were going to talk about. But there were, probably a lot more than that. But one of them was being bored. I know that he didn't like, I'm sure a lot of you feel the same way too. Does anyone here hate being bored? You like being, of course, we all hate it. And he always liked to be interested in doing things. And I heard a story that when he was being interviewed once for television, and the person who was interviewing him, he yawned in the middle, and the interviewer said, "Are you bored?" And he said, "Yes."
There's Roald looking a bit bored.
There's Roald being bored.
But the other side of that was, of course, he was tremendously enthusiastic about things.
Yeah.
And anything that he went in for, I mean, whether it was orchids or onions or anything he took an interest in, he knew all about it. He was tremendously enthusiastic, and he wanted to share it with you, so that if you went to see him at home, he'd say, "Oh, have a look at this. You know, try one of these. Here comes so and so. She's wonderfully interesting." You know, that sort of thing. So there was the other side was this enthusiasm for everything.
And he didn't like bullies, did he?
He hated that. And there are lots of people who are kind of bullies in the books. And the other thing that he didn't like, can I mention this?
I think you can.
Another thing he didn't like was beards. And if you've read his books, you'll find there's a lot about beards, particularly in the twits. And he didn't like beards, but of course, in a way, I like beards because they're such wonderful things to draw. I mean, and if you look at the beginning of the twits, there's a whole selection of people with beards. And the funny thing is that, I don't know if you thought about this, but Roald didn't like them, but if we grown-ups didn't keep on shaving, we'd all have beards.
We would, wouldn't we?
You're working on one.
I'm working on one. I'm working on a Mr. Twit beard at the moment,
so,
but I'm not quite there yet.
That's what's so nice about them is that here's Danish, but actually I've got a very good pencil for beards. This is
a special beardy pencil.
So if you had a beard, once you get into beards, all kinds of wonderful things can happen. This is the sort of beard you'd like, isn't it?
I'd love a beard like that. I don't know how long it would take me to grow it. That's the only thing. I might need a couple of months.
See, so it's really, the only trouble is if it's a character in a book like Mr. Twit, you have to draw it every time. Actually, this is a very good pencil for, you're not supposed to do this, but it's a very good pencil for beards.
Oh, magic.
See, it's a watercolour crayon. I could give you a bit more hair as well. If
I wouldn't
Yeah.
actually grow the hair too. If I'm having a beard that long, I might still have a bit.
This is the first time we've drawn your beard, isn't it? Right.
Thank you.
I could go on
I'm
like this
definitely
for
going to grow
ages.
that now.
Behave yourself, right?
Now, Quentin, I know that Roald loved writing about villains too, didn't he? I mean, he
Yes.
loved, if you're talking about goodies and baddies, and of course in all his books there are so many good characters, but there are lots of dark characters as well. And he particularly liked writing about the baddies. And is it more fun for you when it comes to illustrating the baddies?
Well, it's jolly nice they're there because why, I think one reason why we got on together is that what we do is a sort of caricature, so that there are real people there, but you exaggerate their features. And so, in fact, when we came to do, I used to go down to his house with my drawings and talk about what the characters would look like. So we had a lot of, and what they would wear and things like that. And so when we started off doing, what's that lady called? Miss Trunchbull.
Yes.
The terrifying Miss Trunchbull.
From Matilda.
I mean, I think when she was originally, we both really exaggerated it rather a lot. And I think when she started, she had,
She really is quite nasty, Miss
she had
Trunchbull,
I mean, she was worse when we first, and I thought, she's horrible. And I think if I remember right, I even gave her a slight moustache, I think. And so, I mean,
You really wouldn't want her as your headmistress, would you?
but I think then, but you see, Ron said she's too much like a man dressed up, you see, but I mean, we must make her terrifying, but like a woman anyway. So we had a lot of conversation about so that we could, she was unpleasant, but she had something rather more like a proper haircut and a bun at the back, so that she would, and then...
Ah, yes, that starts to look like the more familiar Miss Trunchbull that we all know and love.
A brooch.
Or know and despise, I should say.
Yes. And so...
Quite terrifying. In fact, Matilda, we should mention at this point too, shouldn't we, that Matilda the musical is, Matilda has been made into a musical, which is coming to the West End of London very, very soon. In October it opens up. And I think, I've heard that there are 4 different girls who take it in turns to play Matilda in the musical.
Yes, it's going to be, it's an extraordinary production.
Yeah.
Of course, the costumes are based on the drawings in the books. All right.
Lovely. And what about someone nice like Miss Honey? Do you have to think nice thoughts when you're doing Miss Honey?
Yes. No, it's in a funny way. It's as difficult to draw someone who is nice, because you still have to make them look interesting if you can. And it's the same is true of Matilda, because I did a lot of drawings of Matilda as well. And you probably wouldn't, when I drew her finally, I mean, she looks a bit like this. And of course, she's a little girl who is, and she's wonderful at reading books, which is so marvellous, so we all like that. But she's really quite small, and it's important that she's small, but in fact, she had a very sort of, thank you.
Wonderful.
When I first drew her, she had a much more, a face much more like a 4-year-old, you see, which wouldn't be right, because she's, although she's only 4 or 5 or 6, she's much, much more intelligent. So I think you have to make her.
You have to make her look a little bit
like
old.
that.
Yeah.
Can I tell you one thing about the musical?
Please do, yeah.
That was, I didn't have anything to do with the scenery or anything like that. But what they said to me, which was very nice, they said you can draw the school badge.
Oh, you did. So you designed the school badge for the musical.
school badges. Well, I'm not doing this very well, am I? So,
so if you go and see the musical and you see the badges that they wear on their uniforms, this is how it's going to look.
Carefully, and in fact, I did several, and I've kind of forgotten. I'm not quite sure which one I used in the end. That's Miss Trunchbull's hand there.
There's a lot of that goes on at the school, doesn't it?
So maybe that one.
Fabulous. That's great. Now, sometimes some of the books came along and you realised that there was a whole cast of characters that you were going to have to draw.
Yes.
Which must have been quite daunting, but I'm thinking particularly of a book like James and the Giant Peach, for example, where you had so many different characters and different insects and animals that you had to draw. How did you cope with that?
Somehow. What you do I think you imagine they're people, because what's interesting about the characters in that book is that they're insects, but they're also people, and you have to make them both of those things in the pictures. And what you do if you're doing the illustrations for a book, you read the book several times, you really get to know it terribly well, and then you try and imagine, and you start drawing, and you don't always find exactly the right. I'm not even sure that I can quite remember what I did about the great green grasshopper, for instance, who was really a sort of a rather old-fashioned person who was a musician that was rather dignified, and so I gave him rather an old-fashioned costume, as though he was from a former time. But sometimes there's a little bit of a problem because, for instance, you have to make him look a bit like a human being.
Yeah.
But he's someone who's got 4 arms, which is rather strange. So you have to decide what you're going to do. There's, you've got one arm, and then you've got another one. Yeah, sort of like that, you see. Which it can be quite nice sometimes, because he can be making several gestures at once.
All those hands. Oh, it's lovely, Quentin.
There's a peach.
And a
going
peach
off into
even.
the sky. Carried by seagulls. Right, there they are from a distance. Right, so.
Fabulous. Well done. Now, I know we were talking earlier, and I had said that there was going to be a big surprise and that you were going to reveal some creatures which have never previously been seen that featured in one of Roald's books.
Yes.
And perhaps you can tell us a little bit, why were these creatures never included in the book?
Well, the ones I'm thinking of, I mean, in Roald's books, creatures are always turning up, but, and this is in the BFG, where Sophie is saying, oh, I don't believe in that. And the BFG says, well, perhaps you've never seen a, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And he mentions some exotic creatures. Now, of course, in the book, we had to be getting on with the story, so what you saw was a picture of the BFG and you saw Sophie. You didn't see these creatures.
See the creatures. So, for example, if we were to say, could you draw us a great squizzly Scotch hopper? Do you have any ideas about that?
I could try.
You could try. Fabulous. So a great squizzly Scotch hopper. This is the bit you might remember in the book when the BFG is having a conversation with Sophie and he's talking about some common animals and he tells her that her brain is full of rotten wool. So these are some of the creatures that he mentions.
It doesn't sound a very nice creature, does it?
It doesn't. A squizzly Scotch hopper.
These are squizzly bits.
Very squizzly.
And also, I suppose, it's got to be able to hop if it's going to do hopscotch. I suppose that's what it does. I think that could...
Fantastic. So that's the great Squizzly Scotch hopper seen for the very first time from the BFG. Do you want another one?
Can we do another?
What about a humple crimp?
A humple crimp.
That sounds pretty nasty, doesn't it? These, of course, are all quite common creatures for a BFG.
It's the same. What's wonderful about drawing is the same way that if you like using language, you can you can make up.
The language is terribly suggestive, isn't it? It puts these wonderful images, which then you've interpreted so beautifully on the paper.
You see, and the good thing about drawing is you can do what you like, so you just give it as many legs as you feel like at the moment. Right, off it goes.
Off goes the humple crimp. And do you want to do a crump scottle?
We've got time for one more.
I think we've got quick time for quick. And finally, we have got time for one more, so we're going to see the crump scoddle before we have some questions from you all. So have you all got your questions ready almost? Keep thinking about those questions, because we're going to take some from the internet as well. But this is the crump scoddle as appears in the BFG. I like those antlers. It looks like it's got antlers. Fabulous. Wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you, Quentin. Right, I think it's time we had some questions from you all. So we're going to come back over here. And we're going to see, I know we've got mics that are roving all around. So if you've got your hand up and there's a mic near you, let's go to that. What's our first question, please? If you tell us your name and what school you're from, that would be great.
I'm from South Bank International School, and my question is, what's your favorite drawing that you drew?
Oh, that's a terribly hard question. I mean, it's a very
always a
interesting
tricky
question.
one, isn't it? Favorite drawing.
Favorite drawing. There are certain books I like. I like the BFG very much. So I suppose if I had to say, I would say one of those. But there's another answer, in fact, which is my favourite one, and I always hope it's going to be the next one, which is what's so interesting. What is going to come next? So that's kind of the answer.
The book, the one that's just in the offing there.
Yes.
And now, where's our... we've got... Yeah, let's go to our microphone over here. Yeah, yes, you. Can we have your question?
Hello, my name is Yasmin and I come from Hollymount School. My question is, when did you start drawing?
How old are you, Jasmine?
8.
Well, I started when I was 8. No, I started before then, actually. I started as soon as I could. One of the good things is that when you're very young, you learn how to speak and you learn how to draw at the same time. And then people go on speaking, but they stop drawing. I started drawing when I was at junior school, and I knew I liked it, and went on drawing at home. And then when I got to secondary school, I did some drawings for the school magazine. And then after that, I started sending drawings to a comic magazine called Punch, which had jokes in it. And I had some of those published when I was still at school, when I was 16, they were little tiny drawings, and they weren't very good, but it was exciting for me to see something printed. It's the same as if you have drawings in an exhibition. It's very exciting. And so I kept on doing that. but the first book I illustrated was just over 50 years ago.
Wow, 50 years ago.
So I've done a lot of other books since then.
I think now let's take a question from the internet because we've got some that have come in. I've got a question here from Mary-Claire Lindsay. She says, when I was young, I had your book, Drawing for the Artistically Undiscovered, which I loved. Inside you said, rule number 1 was that you should never use an eraser because everything you draw is good and worth something, advice that I really took to heart. But tell me, do you really never use an eraser? Is that true, Quentin?
It's almost true.
You never rub things out, you do something.
No, I hope you've seen that book because you can still get it, and it's been going for years. A lot of people have written to me to say how much they liked it. And of course it encourages you to draw on the page.
Yeah.
And that sort of messy beard of yours that I did, you can find there's a page where you can do that. Why we put that about the eraser and not rubbing things out on the page was because people get very nervous about drawing. And what we wanted them to do was to go for it. And really, it doesn't matter if you make mistakes.
Yeah.
What happens if you do lots of practice? You get better and better. It's like trying to play tennis and rub out the bit that you didn't like, you know. You just have to do it again until you get a lot of practice. So really, that was the idea, not that there was anything wicked in doing it, but the important thing was, because sometimes somebody draws something and thinks, oh, that's not quite right, I'll get rid of it, and I'll do it again. No, that's not the way to do it. You just have to go for it. I will confess that I did use one on Sunday, because I
You used the eraser on Sunday.
But I had to do a drawing of myself, and there was a line completely in the wrong place, and so I rubbed it out. So I do sometimes. But it's a question of, the important thing is to start drawing with enthusiasm and not worry too much. You will get it right as you get used to it.
Yeah. So learn from your mistakes. Don't worry about them too much.
That's right.
Right, let's have a question up at the back there. Yeah.
I'm Tristan, come from St Catherine's, and my question is, what inspired you to make a job out of illustrating?
Well, what inspired me to make a job out of illustrating. It's because I was able to send some drawings, as I said, to magazines, and so I found that you could earn money by doing that. And in fact, I didn't expect to make a career of it, and I trained to be a teacher, in fact. And if I hadn't done it, I would have been a teacher, and I would have liked that. And in fact, the two things are not so very different. But I got a friend to write a book that I could illustrate, and we did that first book. And I said, I'll go on illustrating for 5 years, and if I can make a living, I'll keep on. If not, I'll stop. But I did. And what really inspired me to want to do it is telling a story in pictures. To go through a story in a book and to draw all the pictures from beginning to end. And that's what's so marvellous about the Roald Dahl books. I mean, they're fascinating stories, and everyone is different. So you never know what you're going to do next. And to do the drawings following the story is really fascinating to me.
So as an illustrator, it becomes a journey of discovery, really, for you.
Yes, it is. It's a surprise. And it's also, in a funny way, it's like acting all the parts as well. You know, you think, now I'll be Miss Trunchbull, and now I'll be Matilda. You know, you do all the parts as you're drawing.
Everything comes to life. Now, let's take another question from the internet here. We've got a question from Louise Hill, who says, did you ever help Roald Dahl with ideas for the characters and stories? And that comes from Courtney at Grimes Dyke Primary School in Leeds.
No,
did you help him?
No, I never helped him. I never knew what was going to come, as I was explaining before. That was what was exciting to me about it. I think you saw Roald, you know, you've probably seen Roald, pictures of him sitting in his shed. He sat there and wrote, and that's where his imagination produced these things. So I think that it's only that I perhaps helped him see them when the illustrations arrived, and he would say, oh no, I think she's a bit fatter than that, or I imagine he was a bit older. So we adjusted the characters. But no, they all came from him. That's what's so marvelous about writers, because you get their story, and it's full of things to draw, you know.
And then that's when everything begins. Right, let's have another question from our audience here. Yes, there's a boy there. Yeah.
My name's Aaron from Jubilee School, and my question is that, have you ever written a book?
Have I ever written a book?
Yes, have you ever
Yes,
written a book?
I have written a book, actually. I've written several books, but my books are very short books. They're the stories for picture books. And the way I do that, it's a different way. I mean, in a sense, I would call Roald Dahl a real writer, but I write the words under the pictures I want to draw. So I did a book called, a long time ago, I did a book called Patrick, which was about a young man who had magic violin. Yes. And it was a book for the pictures, because when he played the violin, everything in the book changed color. So that was so I could do those pictures. And in fact, I did write a book called Clown. And that's the adventures of a toy clown. I mean, in a sense, I wrote the story. You can follow the story in the book, but there aren't any words.
No words
so I sort of wrote the story in my mind and then did it all in drawings. So telling stories, yes, it's very interesting to me.
Interesting. You don't always need words to tell a great story, then.
No. And in fact, sometimes I've done a book for myself and I've written it in words, and then I start doing the drawings, and as I do the drawings, I think, oh, I don't need to say that. You can see he's unhappy, you know, things like that. You can tell the story in the expressions of the people and what they're doing.
Fantastic. Right, let's have another. Should we take one from the back again? Yeah. Can we have your question, please?
My name is Amy. I come from Poet School, and my question is, what authors would you like to draw for?
Which authors?
What other authors would you like to draw for?
Well, that's a hard question in a way. The main answer is I've done the illustrations for Roald Dahl, so I don't have to worry about much else. But I've been very lucky with the writers I've written. I've drawn pictures for, whose writings I've illustrated. Like Michael Rosen and Joan Aiken and John Yeoman and several other people. And of course, what is interesting about that is that you become a different person each time. Yeah. And I suppose the author I want to draw for now is the one I don't know about yet. You know,
the next one.
One day, my publisher or someone will send me a story, and it'll be different, and I'll open it, and I think, oh, here's something new to do. That's what's interesting about it.
And that's still terribly exciting for you to receive that manuscript.
Yes, I know it never goes away. Drawing just goes on being interesting, but because there are new things to draw all the time. That's what's fascinating.
Always new things.
Yeah.
That's good. Right. Where's our...
How are we getting on out there?
Let's... Over there, yep. Where's our microphone? Yeah. Yeah.
My name is Tyler, and I come from St. Richard's First School. My question is, what did you do when you were young?
Mostly drawing. No,
Lots of drawing.
I was a small schoolboy in the war, so we used to play in the streets. I used to draw pictures. I read a lot of books, and I've still got some of the books that I read then. I wasn't much good at sport, I don't think.
Not a keen sports person at school?
No, I read books, but I remember drawing even then. I was fascinated by it, and I used to draw at home, and that's mostly what I did. I did it very badly, as a matter of fact, to begin with. I mean, one mustn't be discouraged. I've still got some of the drawings that I did when I was 6 or 7 or 8, and some of them are terrible, you know. But that's how you get better at it. You just by doing it, I think.
I'm sure. Anyone here wants to be an illustrator? Anyone interested in doing drawings? Yeah, lots.
Oh, lots are wonderful.
So
yes.
keep practicing. That's
Yes.
the important thing to do. Let's take another one of our questions that we've had come through on the internet. This one comes from Claire Crean, and she says, "We have a budding illustrator in our class. Can you give him any advice?"
Well, yes, all kinds of advice. I think that I've said already, you have to do lots of drawing.
Yeah.
There was somebody, an old illustrator, many, many years ago, said to me, "You have to draw 1,000 miles of line before you get a drawing published." And it's the same thing. It means you have to absolutely, you use those things that you draw with, you get used to them.
Yeah.
So they do. It's like learning to play the violin or play tennis. You have to learn the way that they work. The other thing is that you need to read a lot of books as well, and you need not just to do illustrations, but to draw everything. Draw your friends, draw the place you go on holiday. Don't worry if the drawings don't look finished or smart, again, but what you do is you're learning a language then, so that you should have lots and lots of books of drawings, and that's how you get to know how to draw things. When I was a young man, I went to life classes where there was a model, a woman or a man standing there, you drew them and you did drawings of them. I haven't done that for years, but I learned the way that people move and the way that what they look like when they're moving about. So I use it all the time now. So you've got to do lots of drawing and lots of drawing of all kinds of things as well. Then you find what you really like.
Yeah, and presumably getting into the habit of carrying a sketchbook around with you all the time.
That's very good too. Yeah. Yes. I mean, you can do it in the bus or anywhere.
So wherever you are,
you're never bored.
Never stop scribbling away.
That's
Keep
it.
going. Right. Let's have. Where's our microphone? Can we take a question from down here? Yeah. I can see this girl here. You're dying to give us your question, aren't you? Hold on, the microphone's just coming. Yeah. What's your name? Can we have? Where are you from? What school?
Phillipswood.
Right. And what's your question, please?
Was Roald Dahl your best friend?
What's Roald Dahl your best?
He wasn't my best friend. He was one of my best friends, but of course I didn't see him all the time. It was wonderful to get to know him over time, because every time there was a book, I used to go to his home and meet his wife and his family and talk to him. And so we did get to know each other very well. But of course I have lots of other friends who are artists and my friends who I was teaching with. And so I'm glad to say I've got quite a lot of friends, but I'm very pleased and proud to say he was one of them. I think I was very fortunate. I mean, you can illustrate books of people you don't know, and you can enjoy that. But to know somebody as well as that and find out how their mind works is very interesting indeed.
Yes, it's interesting. So many of us feel as though we know him through his books.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, that's a wonderful way to get to know people. Right, I think we've got time for 2 more questions. Let's have that, just over there. Can we have your question, please? Yeah, the boy just there.
Hi, my name is Declan and I'm from Walnut Tree Walk School. My question is, what would be the best drawing that you drew?
What would be the best drawing that you drew, Quentin?
That's a question that's impossible to answer. I tell you one thing, though. I mean, it makes me say something about drawing and about illustrations in books, because it isn't one drawing, I think, that's the best drawing. What is interesting to me is the sequence of, a series of pictures which tell a story. And so I think, we've talked about the BFG. That series of pictures is one of my best sets of drawings. And I mean, I can look at books and think, oh, that one I didn't do quite so well, that one was better. But the BFG's got all kinds of complicated things in it, and to draw those, but it's looking at all the pictures together that makes it perhaps the best one.
So it's never just one single thing.
It's not just one, no.
It's taking an overview. Let's take one from the internet here. Jen Bassonia says, who are the writers as brilliant as Roald Dahl when it comes to plot creating? What books do you suggest we read? So are there any writers around today that you're particularly keen on?
I don't know the writers who are around today. I know the person that I would mention, and I think Roald would be pleased if I mentioned, which is Charles Dickens. And Dickens, or as he called him, Dahl's Chickens. Those books are quite hard to read when you're young because they're very long and they're quite complicated. But I know that Roald admired them, and they are books that I would love to illustrate. I've illustrated one.
Have you? Which one did you illustrate? Oliver Twist? Oh, no.
I've forgotten which one it is. How very strange. But anyway, I've done some drawings for Dickens, and they're very exciting, complicated, and have these extraordinary characters. And I'm sure that Roald must have read those with a great deal of interest. When you get round to it, read some of those books. They're astonishing.
Yeah, they're very rich. Right, I think now we've got our last question, and I saw someone up there. He looks like, yeah. I'm sorry. With so many questions, but we're running out of time. And can we have your question, please?
My name's Fraser. I come from St Catherine's. What's your favourite book of Roald Dahl?
So difficult. It may be. They're all so different, which is what's so interesting about it.
Yeah.
Can I have a question, please?
Yes, I think you can.
To finish off with.
You deserve one.
Can I draw another creature?
Yes. I think we'd love to see another. Would you like that? What's this creature that you're going to draw for us, Quentin? Is it something
it hasn't got a
we have
name
to guess?
yet. Everybody can go home and make up a name for it. How about that?
So, get your thinking caps on and see if you can come up with a name for this creature, yeah? Two heads, lots of legs. Or even better, maybe you can start writing a story about this creature. Wow. Fantastic. Thank you. Well, I think that's a wonderful way to finish today. Quentin has drawn you a creature there. You can give that a name. You can maybe write a little story about it and share it with everyone else. We'd all love to hear. Thank you all so much for coming today and joining us. Thank you, of course, to our special guest, Quentin Blake. We'll see you again soon. Bye.